This is a new bidet I just ordered on Amazon, and after trying one of the cheap ones, I decided to upgrade to something a little nicer that requires a plug to control all the fancy features. Unfortunately, I don't have an outlet anywhere near my toilet, and I really don't want to run an extension cord across my bathroom, but I do have an outlet on the other side of the wall here which I'm going to use to tap into in order to install a new outlet near the back of the toilet. My only problem is that the outlet will need to be farther down the wall, and I've got a few studs in the way preventing me from easily fishing a new cable from the existing outlet over to the new one. The conventional method would be to cut a strip of drywall between the two in order to drill through the studs, but my drywall skills are average at best, so my plan here is to do all of the cutting and drilling behind the baseboard. That way, when I'm finished, I can just put the baseboard back on and cover up all the damage I'm about to do to the wall. To remove the baseboard, I like to take a utility knife and score along the edges, and then use a stiff putty knife to get behind the board and gently pry it away from the wall. You'll want to be patient and go slow during this process. Baseboard is really easy to break, especially if yours is made out of MDF like mine is, and I really want to be able to reuse this piece when I'm done. Next, I'm using the utility knife to cut the drywall just below where the top of the baseboard was. It'll take a few passes to get a clean cut all the way through the gypsum. You can save it for later if you're able to remove it in one piece. Unfortunately, mine was nailed at the bottom and broke apart as I was taking it out. I removed all the nails and debris, leaving a nice channel to work with here at the bottom of the wall. Next, I needed to drill a hole through each stud for the wire to pass through. I'm using a 5/8 inch spade bit on a right angle adapter attached to my drill. You'll want the hole to be as close to the center of the stud as possible, which is tough to do without that right angle adapter. This is one of my favorite additions to my toolbox and would be well worth picking up for this project alone. I'm also trying my best to get the hole a few inches above where the top of the baseboard would be so that I don't risk hitting the electrical line with a nail when putting it back on. Next, you'll need to grab what's called an old work junction box from any hardware store. It's got these little tabs on the back that grab the drywall as you tighten the screws down, so they don't need to be attached to the stud. Decide where you want your outlet to go, and then flip the box over and trace the outline on the wall. That makes it really easy to go over with a jab saw and cut a perfectly sized hole the first time. You can also do this with a utility knife, but it definitely takes a lot more effort. Remove the piece of drywall and check and make sure your box fits without letting it fall through to the other side. We're not securing the box just yet, just ensuring that's the correct size. Having that open hole will make it much easier to grab the wire once we get it over to the other side. Next, we need to make sure the power is turned off at the electrical panel so that we can remove the outlet that we are going to tap into. Double check the power is turned off by using an outlet tester or plugging in a known working device to confirm that the outlet is not live. These backstab connections can be kind of a pain to remove, and sometimes it's just easier to snip the wires and buy a new outlet for $1. Once we have our wires free, we're going to grab some 14-2 Romex and then feed this through the knockout hole at the bottom rear of the receptacle box. I'm going to go ahead and pull enough wire to make it down to the stud bay where the new outlet will be before going back and threading it through the holes that we drilled a little while ago. You might be tempted to just notch the studs and feed the wire down to where you need it using those grooves, but that would leave the Romex in a really vulnerable position and would be easy to damage with a nail or a screw. Going through the center of the studs will leave the Romex in a much more protected state, and we won't have to add any nail plates or anything else to remain code compliant. Pull the wire through the new hole on the other side and then push it through the back of the old work receptacle box using the knockout tabs at the bottom. Put the box in place and then tighten it to the wall using a drill or a screwdriver. Now it's time to prep the wires for installation of the new outlet. I'm using a utility knife to cut and remove the outer insulation, and then taking some wire strippers and exposing a short length of the bare copper. You'll want to make sure your new outlet is GFCI protected, since this location is considered wet, and the National Electric Code calls for GFCI protection in all wet areas like bathrooms, kitchens, and laundry rooms. Whenever I'm adding receptacles in these old work boxes, I like to remove the tabs from the top and bottom. If you don't, the cover plate won't be flush with the wall after everything is finished. Now the other outlet was installed using the backstab connections, which are these little holes on the back of the receptacle. These are for use by licensed electricians only, and since I'm not a professional, I'm going to do the proper thing and loop the wires around the conductor screws. In most cases, the hot or black wire will go to the gold screw, the white or neutral wire will go to the silver screw, and the bare copper ground wire will go to the green screw. Now the direction of the loop matters here. You want to make sure the loose end wraps around clockwise. That way when we tighten the screw down, it pulls the rest of the wire tight instead of pushing it away, which would cause a weak connection. Once we've got that receptacle in, it's time to wire up the existing outlet. We need to do the same wire prep over here by stripping away the insulation and exposing the copper, but this time we're also going to take some leftover Romex and remove a few inch section of each conductor wire. I'm using wire nuts to connect all of the wires of the same color together, including the new short sections, which we will use to attach directly to the receptacle in what's called a pigtail connection. Again, we are not using the backstab holes here, we're looping the wires around the terminal screws like we should, and once everything is folded up nice and compact inside the box and the outlet is secured in place, we can go ahead and get this power turned back on. I'm giving both of these outlets a quick check using an outlet tester before putting the cover plates back on. Testing the outlet will tell me if I've got any crossed wires or missing connections, and is another useful tool to have around for any homeowner. It also has the ability to test the GFCI function of the new outlet, which I'm doing here to make sure we are properly protected. Now we can get the cover plates back on and be finished with the electrical portion of this project. I absolutely demolished the strip of drywall trying to remove it, so I had to pick up a small panel from the hardware store for a few dollars to cut some replacement pieces. It doesn't have to be super tight. Remember, the whole point of this was to avoid doing any patchwork. We don't need to add any nail plates or any special protection since the new electrical line is running through the center of the studs. I wouldn't expect a wire to be this low in the wall if I hadn't been the one to do it, so I'm writing a little note indicating its presence. That way, on the off chance someone's doing renovations 10 or 20 years down the line, it may save them a surprise. I'm throwing a couple drywall screws into the bottom of each piece just to keep everything aligned and secure. Now it's time to get the baseboard back on. It should go right back into place without having to do any cutting or adjusting. I have no shame in working smarter, not harder, so I'm going to use some tape to help me caulk up this joint and make it nice and pretty. Now that everything's cleaned up, all that's left to do is install our new butt washer and plug it in. Thanks for checking this video out, and we'll catch you on the next one.